Welcome back to KOTLC AM Audiobooks for chapters 34, 35, and 36 of Keeper of the Lost Cities. Thanks for being here, and make sure to subscribe so you never miss a chapter. The council was right. Information had been planted in her brain. The idea was too huge. She couldn't make it fit inside her head. Her hands shook as she ripped the photo off the scrapbook. She was violating everything Alden had told her, everything the council ordered. But if anyone found out, her life would never be the same again. She slipped the photo into the middle of a thick book and shoved the book among a dozen other thick books on the highest bookshelf. It would be safe there, for now. All she wanted was to curl up into a ball and never get up again, but she didn't have time. Someone stuck stuff in her brain, and she needed to find those memories before they got her in trouble again. What made her think of Elementine? She pulled out her star maps and plotted the stars on her list on one page, like she'd seen Kenrick doing at the tribunal. The 6 stars formed 2 lines, pointing straight to Elementine. The room swam around her. It couldn't be an accident. That list must have been made specifically for her, which meant someone wanted her to find Elementine. But who and why? And what would they want next? She stayed up all night projecting anything she could think of into her memory log, but when the sun rose, she was no closer to an answer. All she knew for sure was that she had to keep it secret. If the council found out, they'd never let her stay at Foxfire. Bronte would make sure of it. They might even decide she was dangerous, and she didn't want to think what they'd do then. Especially since she couldn't be sure she wasn't dangerous. She'd almost blown up the school. Or worse, what if that had been the plan when someone gave her that list? Nowhere seemed safe enough to hide the memory log, so she stuffed it in the bottom of her satchel to keep with her at all times. None of her friends noticed how stressed she was. They were used to her difficulties in PE, and during lunch, they were too distracted by all the pressure they were getting to manifest special abilities. It wasn't until telepathy that she'd wished she'd stayed home sick. "Did you sleep at all last night?" Tieran asked, as she slumped into her chair. "No." There was no point in lying. She'd seen her reflections. Her dark circles rivaled Adeline's. "I expected as much." He cleared his throat. "Alden told me what happened yesterday." She should have guessed that, which meant he knew about her special assignment. She gripped her satchel like holding it tighter would protect the secrets inside. "Have you started the memory log?" he asked, confirming her fear. She hesitated for a second before she nodded. "I assume you don't want to show me?" Silence stretched between them until Tieran removed a black pathfinder from his pocket. "Concentrate," he commanded, and a wave of blue light swept them away. Noise hammered into her brain as the scenery glittered back into substance. "Remember to shield," Tieran shouted, as she covered her ears, trying to squeeze out the pain. She closed her eyes and pushed against the noise with her mind. The chaos quieted, and she started breathing again. Tieran led her to a bench, and she sank down, exhausted. He plopped beside her. "Welcome to Los Angeles. Actually, I believe they call this place Hollywood." She'd been away from humans for almost 6 months, long enough to forget the traffic, pollution, and trash. It turned her stomach. Aren't we a little conspicuous?" She pulled on her stupid cape. "Here?" Across the street, Spider-Man and Batman posed for a picture outside Mann's Chinese theater. "No, I guess not. If anything, they blended right in. What are we doing here?" "Breaking the law." He held up the pathfinder, casting blue beams of light on the ground. "Only blue crystals take you to the Forbidden Cities, and only certain members of the nobility are allowed to have them. Mine was issued when I worked for the council, and I forgot to give it back when I resigned. So, this trip is our little secret, okay?" She nodded. "I come here sometimes. I'm not supposed to, but it helps me to see them in real life." He pointed to the humans wandering the streets, oblivious to elves sitting among them. "We've cut ourselves off," vanished into the light. Makes it easy to forget how similar we are. Or could be, if they weren't so stubborn. He paused, like he was waiting for her to speak, but she didn't know what to say. "Do you miss your human life?" he asked. She thought about the headaches, the fear of discovery, how out of place she always felt, and opened her mouth to say, "No, but sometimes I miss my family," slipped out instead. His expression softened. "That's good, Sophie. You of all people should never forget where you came from. If you ever need reminding, let me know and I'll bring you here." She nodded. "Do you wonder why you were hidden with the humans?" Her mind darted unwillingly to Prentice. "My real parents must have wanted to get rid of me," she whispered. He closed his eyes, and pain seeped into his features. "Trust me, Sophie. No one got rid of you. Don't you know how special you are?" "Yeah, special enough to have secret information stored in my brain without my permission," she mumbled. Which was probably why Prentice got rid of her. Who'd want a freak for a daughter? Or maybe he was the one who'd planted the information. Her hands clenched into fists. "That's not the only reason you're special. Believe me." Tieran cleared the strain out of his voice. "Have you remembered anything else since the tribunal?" She watched an ant crawl across the dirty pavement. "I understand if you're not ready to talk about it, but don't be afraid to explore your memories. They might be the only way to understand who you really are." "What if I'm someone bad?" she whispered, putting words to the fear that had consumed her since yesterday. "I can assure you you're not," he promised. She shook her head, refusing to believe him. "What do you know about Prentice?" Tieran shifted in his seat. "I know that's classified information, but I think I deserve to know who he was." She took an extra breath for courage. "He was my father, wasn't he?" Tieran sucked in a breath. "Of course not. Why would you think that?" "He was a keeper, and he was exiled because of me. It's not hard to put the pieces together." "Sophie, look at me," Tieran said, waiting until she did. "Prentice was exiled because he was hiding your existence, not because he was responsible for it." "What do you mean?" He hesitated, and she could tell he was wearing himself, deciding how much to say. "Please," she whispered, "no one tells me anything about my past." He sighed and looked away. When he spoke, his words were hurried, like he was forcing them out before he could change his mind. "Prentice was a keeper for the group called the Black Swan, and the information he was hiding was you. Where to find you. I'd warned Prentice that there would be consequences for helping the Black Swan, but he didn't listen, and when he was captured, he sacrificed his sanity to help you keep hidden. Now he lives in exile, his mind a shattered, useless mess." "That's why you're so upset with Alden?" He nodded. "Alden was the one who found him. I pleaded for mercy on Prentice's behalf, but the council demanded to know what Prentice was hiding in his mind, so Alden oversaw something called a memory break. It's a type of probe that shatters someone's sanity in order to access their hidden memories." Sophie shivered. She couldn't picture Alden carrying out that kind of order, unless he knew it was right. But why wouldn't Prentice just tell them where she was? "What exactly is the Black Swan?" "Something our society doesn't know what to do with." He wrung the edge of his cape between his hands. "The name is a metaphor. For thousands of years, humans were convinced there was no such thing as a black swan. So when a black swan was found, it became a symbol of something that shouldn't exist but does. A small group of insurgents in our society adopted the name. A brewing rebellion. A black swan in a society where rebellion isn't supposed to exist." "How do you know so much about them?" she had to ask. "You are not the only one with secrets you'd rather not share." Sophie swallowed, realizing how little she knew about her favorite mentor. He couldn't be involved in anything wrong, could he? No, Tieran was one of the kindest people she knew. He could never be bad. Bad. So, the Black Swan are bad guys, right? She whispered, staring at her hands. And if they have something to do with me... She couldn't bear to follow the thought to its end. Tieran took her hands and waited for her to meet his eyes. Whatever the Black Swan is, it has nothing to do with who you are. When I look at you, I only see good. You came forward when you cheated. You even chose to serve your detention when you didn't have to. Whatever's in your mind is just information, and whatever secrets lie in your past do not change who you are now. I have no doubt you'll make the right decision, whenever the time comes to make them. His words felt more healing than the balm Ellen used to cool her burns. Her voice was thick when she spoke. Thank you, Tieran. I'll remember that. She wasn't sure what to do with the other things he told her. The bits and pieces belonged to a puzzle she didn't know if she wanted to solve. For now, she tucked them away, clinging to the hope that Tieran was right, that she was good. As long as that was true, she could survive pretty much anything else. Despite Tieran's encouragement, Sophie didn't feel ready for anyone to know about her revelations, especially Bronte. She kept the memory log with her at all times and only took it out to work when she was alone. Grady and Adeline were used to her practicing alchemy in the caves, so they didn't question when she disappeared after school every day with Iggy. And Dex was so busy with the added ability detecting exercises, he didn't notice they weren't hanging out as much. The only one who seemed concerned was Bianna. She cornered Sophie in the hallway. Are you mad at me? What? No. Why? You haven't come over in the last 3 weeks. It was before the school was evacuated. Had it really been that long? Sorry, I've been super busy. Do you want to come over this weekend? I don't think I can. She needed to avoid Alden so he wouldn't ask her about the memory log. What about next weekend? Sure. Bianna seemed so insistent, and she could always cancel. Bianna straightened, like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. Cool. I'll tell my parents so they know to be home. Oh, good. She was sure her smile looked more like a grimace. Deep down, she knew she was overreacting. Other than Elementine and the photo of the sandcastle, she hadn't found anything significant. She'd pored through her scrapbook for anything elfish and recorded every dream, but there was nothing worth hiding. Maybe Elementine was a one-time thing. She wasn't going to stop searching, but maybe she didn't need to stress so much about the memory log. So, she didn't cancel her plans with Bianna. She went to Everglen, and it felt like coming home. They played Base Quest again, and this time she was on Fitz's team. His eyes held a tiny bit of envy when Sophie showed him the way she tracked thoughts to an exact location. She tried to teach him, but his mind couldn't master it, so she did the tracking and transmitted the location to him so he could tag Keith and Bianna out. She was so familiar with the feel of Fitz's mind after all the times she transmitted him across campus during the telepathy sessions, she barely had to concentrate to find him. After losing 3 rounds in a row, Keith refused to play unless Sophie was on his team. She agreed to the switch, and then transmitted their hiding spots to Fitz so they'd lose and keep the suspicion off her. Keith looked ready to explode when Fitz tagged him out a second time, and he spent the rest of the night grumbling about conspiracies. Sophie laughed until her sides hurt. She couldn't believe she'd let fear keep her away from this much fun for over a month. Especially since Alden never asked to see her memory log. He and Della hugged her, told her to visit more often, and disappeared for the rest of the day on official business. For once, she didn't want to know where they went. She was done asking questions, done investigating conspiracies. Not that she'd made any headway. She didn't want to accidentally trigger any more memories. Ignorance was safer. Whatever was going on was the Council's problem, not hers. She wouldn't let fear control her again. She made it 1 whole month without unnecessary stress or worry, and then Dame Elena said the 2 most terrifying words ever. Final exams. 1 month until finals. And even if she passed the test, She still had to face another tribunal where the council, Bronte, would permanently decide her future at Foxfire. She felt like throwing up every time she thought about it. Alchemy was still her worst subject, but she also struggled with elementalism and PE, all the subjects where she had to do things, not just learn. She still hadn't figured out how to turn off the part of her brain that screamed levitating was impossible, that lightning couldn't be jarred, and that the law of conservation of mass was a legitimate scientific principle, and it always messed her up. Dex had been nagging her for months to try an elixir he invented called Nogganese, which contained limbium, a rare mineral that could supposedly clear her mind. She'd resisted, since she couldn't use it during exams, but maybe it was like learning to ride a bike. She needed training wheels to start. Dex looked downright giddy when she asked for a bottle, probably because her lack of skill caused him to lose when they were on the same team in PE. He brought her a week's supply the next morning. She swallowed the unnaturally cold syrup in one gulp, wincing as the chill ran down her throat. I don't feel different. Dex laughed. Give it a chance. Your body needs time to absorb it. I should probably change into my uniform then. A few steps towards her locker, and her mind fuzzed. She leaned against the wall for support. I don't think it's working right. She couldn't describe what was happening, but she was pretty sure it wasn't a good thing. Dex rushed to her side. You don't look so great. I don't feel so great. She closed her eyes. The blurry vision was nauseating, and tore at her clothes. It was far, far too hot to be wearing a cape. Here, let me, Dex said, unfastening the clasp on her cape. What's wrong? I don't know, she tugged at her vest. My skin's on fire. Whoa, what are those? Dex pointed to huge red bumps popping up on her arms. Oh no, she gasped, collapsing. Allergy! Dex caught her before she hit the ground. Allergy? What's an allergy? She wanted to explain, but her chest felt like something was crushing it, and she couldn't get enough air. The world spun harder, and her vision dimmed. Hang on, I'll take you to Elwyn. Dex threw her over his shoulder, and then they were moving. He was strong, but they were the same height, and she weighed almost as much as he did, so their progress was slow. Maybe too slow. Fear settled into every muscle, making her tremble. Then someone else grabbed her, cradling her in their arms. She heard some sort of discussion, an argument maybe, and then she was moving faster. She was far too gone to make any sense of it. Then there was tugging in her stomach and burning in her throat, and then she was out cold. Chapter 35. Don't try to speak yet, Sophie, a familiar voice whispered, as her eyes fluttered open. She couldn't, even if she wanted to. Her throat chafed like sandpaper, and her tongue felt like a foreign object. Her blurry eyes focused on a wild-haired head hovering above her. Not if you can understand me, Ellen instructed. She nodded, surprised by how much energy that simple movement took. That's the first good news today. He smiled, but it didn't erase the worry in his eyes as he held a small bottle against her lips. I need you to swallow something for me. Some of it dribbled across her chin, but she managed to get most of it down. That's a good girl. He wiped her face with a soft cloth and placed a cold compress against her forehead. Just rest for now, okay? She nodded again, exhausted from the effort. The warm liquid soothed her dry throat and sent a cool, tingling sensation rushing through her body. After a few minutes, she could swallow normally again. What happened? I'm not exactly sure. Dex said you told him it was an allergy. He thinks it might be the limbium in the solution he gave you, because you'd never had it before. Her fuzzy memories focused. Where's Dex? I made him and Fitz go outside till I had things under control. Things got a little too messy for spectators. Fitz? She vaguely remembered stronger arms carrying her to safety. Had that been Fitz? She was about to ask when she caught what Elwyn had said. Messy? Don't worry, I cleaned up all the vomit, but you need to change your shirt. She bolted upright. I threw up? Everywhere. Never seen anything like that. It's always an adventure with you, isn't it? But don't worry, I don't mind. And neither did Fitz. It was only his PE uniform. She threw up on Fitz? Oh no, she wailed, wondering if it was possible to die of embarrassment. What's the matter? Are you in pain? No, she moaned, trying to crawl under the blankets and disappear. She could smell the mess on her uniform now, and she couldn't decide which was worse, knowing it was on her or knowing it was on Fitz, too. Why? Why did this have to happen? I don't know much about allergies. Never seen one before. And I can't say I'd like to see another. Bullhorn screamed his head off when you came in. Scared the wits out of me. She cringed. It was that close. He bit his lip. Bullhorn's never done that before. They both shivered. How did you know what to do? She whispered. I didn't. I just took my best guess and hoped it would work. When Bullhorn left you alone, I knew I was on the right track. Well, thank you. The words felt trite, considering he'd saved her life, but what else could she say? Just don't ever do that to me again. I'm going to make up a bottle of what I gave you, and you'll want to keep it with you in case you ever have another reaction. And stay away from Limbia. I'll try. He gave her one of his huge tunics and let her alone to change. Her soiled uniform went into an airtight bag to block the smell. You up for company? Ellen asked when she finished. Fitz and Dex won't leave until they see you're okay. She sank lower in her bed and nodded, wondering how to apologize to someone for vomiting on them. You guys can come in, Ellen called. Dex rushed to her side first, followed closely by Fitz. Dex's eyes were red and swollen. I'm so sorry, Sophie. I had no idea you'd react like that. I'd never... It's okay, Dex, she interrupted. It wasn't your fault, and I'm fine now, see? She held up her arm, showing him the blotch-free skin. Dex let out a deep breath. You're really okay? Yeah, just humiliated. She scraped together the courage to look at Fitz. He wore a fitted white undershirt, his PE tunic noticeably absent. I'm so sorry, Fitz. I can't believe I... He held up his hands and smiled his dazzling smile. Don't worry about it. It wasn't nearly as bad as the time Alvar's pet raptor peed all over me. Now that was disgusting. She wanted to believe him, but she was fairly sure she'd always be the girl who threw up on him. It was hard to resist the urge to crawl under a rock and disappear for a decade or two. Still, I'm sorry. You don't need to be. I'm just glad you're okay, and I was there to help. Dex reeled on Fitz. I didn't need your help. Please, you never would have made it in time. I would too! He looked at Sophie to back him up. I don't remember. She wanted to spare Dex's feelings, but deep down she knew Fitz was right, which was a scary thought. Dex scowled. Has that ever happened to you before? Fitz asked. Only once, when I was 9. Had you had any limbium when it happened? Ellen asked. I'd never heard of it before Dex told me about it. Humans don't have stuff like that. Then what caused it last time? The doctors ran tons of tests, but they never figured it out, so they just injected me with a bunch of medicines and steroids and told me to be more careful. She shivered at the thought of needles. Ellen stroked his chin. I honestly can't do much better. The best I can say is to stay away from limbium and wear this all the time. He handed her a tiny black bottle hanging from a cord. If anything like this ever happens again, drink that immediately and find me. I will. She tied the cord around her neck. Can I go to PE now? Are you crazy? Ellen asked. I'm taking you home to rest. Don't even think about arguing. She could tell he wouldn't budge, so she slid out of bed, wobbling as the blood rushed to her head. Fitz caught her and steadied her. She blushed in his arms. Thanks. You shouldn't be on your feet yet, Elwyn scolded, grabbing her arm and wrapping it across his wide shoulders to support her. You guys should really get the session. Well, Fitz might want to hit the showers first. Tex snickered, and Sophie hung her head. I'm so sorry, she whispered. Fitz smiled. Forget it, okay? If you will, I will. Deal. Then Owen stepped into the light, and the warmth pulled them away. Elwyn? Grady called, dropping everything when he saw them. He raced over with Adeline hot on his heels. "What's going on?" "I brought Sophie home to rest. She had a bit of a crisis." "Crisis?" Adeline sounded panicked as she ushered everyone inside, and Elwyn led Sophie to the couch. "What happened?" Sophie hid her face as Elwyn gave them the full story, but she peeked through her fingers when Grady and Adeline gasped over Bullhorn's screaming. They both looked deathly pale. "Did Bullhorn lay down beside her?" Grady asked. His voice sounded hollow. Banshees only did that when someone was on their final breaths. "Yes," Elwyn admitted quietly. "At first he was just screaming, but then he got quiet and curled up against her chest. Nearly gave me a heart attack." "So, she almost died," Adeline whispered, her eyes darting to Sophie and widening. "You almost died!" Sophie couldn't quite hide her shiver. Grady cleared his throat and squeezed Adeline's hand. "She's okay now, right?" "She should be. She's tough. How else could she survive so many disasters?" Grady and Adeline didn't smile. "You look so pale," Adeline whispered. She reached for Sophie, but retracted her hand before actually touching her. "She just needs rest. She'll be back to normal tomorrow." "I'm already back to normal," Sophie said, hating how worried Grady and Adeline looked. "But what if this happens again?" Adeline asked. "It won't," Sophie promised. "Is that true?" Grady asked Elwyn. "I'll have to do some research. In the meantime, I gave her an emergency solution to keep with her. Let's hope she won't need it, and that it works if she does." They both nodded blankly. Elwyn squeezed Adeline's arm. "She's fine now. Once she rests and has something to eat, she'll be back to her old self." "I am back to my old self," Sophie insisted. Adeline nodded, but didn't look convinced. "Well," Grady turned to Elwyn, "we should let you get back to work. Thank you for all you did to save her." "Just doing my job. Besides, Sophie's my best patient." He gave Sophie a small smile. "Just make your next crisis a little less dramatic, okay?" "Maybe this is my last catastrophe," she mumbled. Elwyn laughed. "You never." Grady's lips tightened, and Elwyn looked at the floor. Clearly they agreed with Elwyn, except they didn't seem to think it was funny. Grady helped her up the stairs, and Adeline brought her a bowl of brothy soup in bed, but their minds seemed to be elsewhere. When Sophie finished eating, Adeline clapped twice, and the shades plunged the room into darkness. The shadowy light made them both look worn and haggard. "Are you okay?" Sophie asked. "We're worried about you," Adeline whispered, her eyes on the floor. Sophie opened her mouth, searching for a way to convince them that she really was okay. But her soft bed and comforting darkness turned it into a yawn. "Get some sleep," Grady said, as he tucked her in for the first time since she'd moved in. Maybe it was the way he wrapped the blankets extra snug, or maybe it was Adeline handing her Ella, or maybe it was almost dying. Whatever it was, she snuggled into her pillow, feeling so much like family. She couldn't help whispering, "I love you guys," into the silence. But her body fell asleep before she heard their answer. Chapter 36. A high-pitched screech, like tires squealing across pavement, mixed with hundreds of shrieking girls, jolted Sophie out of her dreams. She threw on work clothes and rushed outside to see if Grady and Adeline needed her help. It was still dark, but once her eyes adjusted, Sophie could see an eagle-sized golden pterodactyl trying to escape the leash Grady held. It somersaulted in the sky, dragging Grady like dead weight, while Adeline and the gnomes tried to calm the nearby animals. "Screech!" Sophie covered her ears. "How can I help?" she shouted to Grady. "You shouldn't be up. Go back to bed, Sophie. We don't need any help." Grady wrapped the leash around his legs for extra stability, and then yanked the cord, trying to rein the creature in. The beast fought back, using speed and momentum to pull Grady over as it gained headway. Screech! Kinda looked like he needed help. Sophie stared at the pterodactyl, trying to figure out what to do. Two enormous golden eyes locked with her, and she held its gaze as an image filled her mind. Fire. Sophie wasn't sure how, but she knew what to do. She raced for the shed, grabbing the alchemy torch Adeline had used when she made solutions for the animals, and then raced back outside. A pile of dried umber leaves sat in the middle of the pasture, waiting to be dispersed for the animals for breakfast. Sophie ran straight to it and lit the mound before she could change her mind. "What are you doing?" Adeline screeched as Sophie jumped back from an enormous blue flame that smelled uncannily like fried chicken. "Someone get some quick snuff." "Just wait a second," Sophie said, pointing to the pterodactyl, which had quieted down. "I know what I'm doing." She really hoped that was true. The creature circled once, then dived nose first into the blaze. Sophie couldn't help shrieking as the fire engulfed its golden body, but the pterodactyl flapped its wings in the flames like a bird in a bird bath. Sophie had to back away to avoid the flying sparks. "What on earth were you thinking?" Adeline demanded, jerking Sophie farther away from the fire. "What would possess you to do that?" It was cold," Sophie pointed to the pterodactyl, still playing in the flames. "Cold?" Grady asked, joining them. He was covered in bits of grass and mud. "Yeah," Sophie told him. "She needed fire." Grady stared at Sophie, then at the creature. "I think you're right. I bet this is a Flareodon. They have fire-resistant fur, and they have to be around flames or they'll freeze to death. That's why they're so rare. But how did you know that?" I'm not sure, but I think..." She tried to replay the moment. It wasn't a triggered memory. She'd been worried about that at first. It was more like... "I think I read its mind. Is that possible?" Grady ran his hands across his face. "I don't know. I've never heard of anyone who can read an animal's mind before." "Who cares?" Adeline interrupted, her voice an octave higher than normal. "You could have been burned. You could have been killed. And you're supposed to be in bed, resting from your last brush with death." Sophie backed away a step from a wild-eyed Adeline. "I was just trying to help. We don't need your help, Sophie. We need you inside where it's safe. Now, go!" She pointed to the house. Sophie glanced at Grady, hoping he'd defend her. She did solve the problem, after all. But Grady was too busy holding a trembling Adeline. That's when it hit her. Fire. Death. Jolie. I'm sorry," Sophie stammered, not sure what to say. "I didn't mean to worry you." "It's fine," Grady said, as much to Adeline as to Sophie. He turned to Sophie. "Go back inside and rest. We'll talk in the morning." He sounded calm and quiet, but something in his expression warned her not to push. "Okay," she mumbled, dropping her eyes. "I guess I'll see you when I wake up." Neither of them said anything as she walked back to the house. No good night, certainly no hugs, and when she turned back to wave, they'd already turned away. Things weren't much better at breakfast the next morning. Grady and Adeline's smiles looked forced, and neither had much to say. "So, where did the Flareodon come from?" Sophie asked, trying to fill the silence. "She flew into our pasture, screeching her head off, and we scrambled to calm her down," Grady answered. "That's when you found us. It's strange. Flareodons live near volcanoes. That's why it didn't occur to me to use fire. Gildy strayed a long way from home." "Gildy?" "We were up late with her, calming her down, and it felt silly to keep calling her Flareodon. So when we figured out it was a female, Adeline named her Gildy." "It's a good name." Adeline gave her a forced smile and looked away. "You really think you read her mind?" Grady asked. "How would I have known about the fire? I think I might go practice with Gildy in a few minutes before school." "Absolutely not," Adeline snapped, instantly on her feet. "You're staying home to rest, and you're not going anywhere near those animals. Is that understood?" "But I'm fine now. I always help you guys outside." "Well, that was a mistake on our part. What I'm correcting now, I don't want you outside in the pastures anymore." Grady couldn't meet her eyes. "Is this about last night?" Sophie whispered. "It's about a lot of things. We haven't been looking out for your safety, and I'm trying to correct that," Adeline sighed. "Why don't you go study? Finals are less than a month away." Unfortunately, Adeline was right. Sophie spent the rest of the weekend trying to wade through the horrible fire-catching books Sir Connolly had assigned her to read the day of the quintessence debacle. She had a feeling fire-catching would be on the final exam, but it was so dry she kept taking breaks to experiment with Iggy. Most of the time she couldn't decipher what he was thinking, but she suspected it was because Iggy didn't think before he acted. Like when he wrestled with one of her socks and rolled off the bed, or shredded her homework for no apparent reason. But other times she did wonder if she could feel his thoughts. It was more of a vague emotion than a concrete thought, which actually made sense. Human thoughts felt different from elven thoughts. Maybe each creature's mind was different. She'd have to ask Tieran to know. If anyone else told me, I would question their sanity, Tieran chuckled. But with you, I'm learning anything is possible. Sophie blushed. You've really never heard of anyone reading animals' minds? No, I've also never heard of anyone translating across impossible distances, or having an impenetrable mind, or tracking exact locations, so I can't say I'm surprised. In fact, I wonder, do you think you could transmit to an animal, or track them? I guess I could try. His face lit up. Yes, you must. And if you can, I think that would qualify as passing your final exam. You'd pass me, just like that? Sophie, you have the greatest telepathic abilities I've ever seen. I'm not sure I'm qualified to test you. Even if you can't do this, I'll find some excuse to pass you. It'd be wrong not to. Her heart lightened at his words. 1 exam down, 7 more to go. I'll work on it tonight and let you know by Thursday. I look forward to hearing your results. Sophie decided to practice with different animals, so she chose their resident T-Rex. Verdi's thoughts were more defined than Iggy's, but less intense than Gildy's, and when she sent Verdi an image of her right paw over and over, Verdi finally got the hint and raised it. Then, Verdi's thoughts told her she wanted a tummy rub as a reward. Sophie giggled and rubbed the soft, downy feathers. She could transmit thoughts to animals. How awesome was that? What are you doing out here? Sophie spun around, backing up a step when she saw the fury in Adeline's eyes. I'm reading Verdi's mind for homework. I think she wants to eat the verminion, so you might want to keep her away from him. She waited for Adeline to laugh, or at least smile. Instead, her eyes narrowed. I thought I made it clear that you're not supposed to be outside. Sophie kept waiting for things to go back to normal after the allergy incident, but it'd been 4 days, and Adeline was getting worse. I have to be allowed outside sometimes. If I tell you something, I expect you to do it, Adeline snapped. But I'm fine. You have to stop acting like everything could kill me. Adeline paled. She looked anywhere but Sophie. You're right. I'm worrying too much. I promise I'll be careful, Sophie said, desperate for something that might erase the pain in Adeline's features. You don't have to worry. Adeline was quiet for a long time before she shook her head. Yes, I do. Then she turned and went inside without another word. Adeline didn't join them for dinner. Sophie tried to ask Grady about it, tried to apologize, but he just told her not to worry and stared out the window. Loud pounding on the front door broke the silence between them. Sophie answered the door to an out-of-breath Alden racing in. The smell of smoke and fires trailed around him like an aura. Grady leaped to his feet. What happened? There's been a development. Alden glanced at Sophie before turning to Grady. I need your help. Their eyes held for at least a minute before Grady stepped back, recoiling like he'd been struck. It took Sophie a second to realize Alden had transmitted a message. Grady leaned on the table, panting breath shaking from his chest as he ran his hands through his hair. I can't, he whispered. You know I wouldn't ask if this weren't imperative. Grady shook his head. I'm sorry. Ask the others. You're the only one I trust. Sophie held her breath, watching Grady. Alden's face looked desperate, and if he was worried, it had to be vital. Grady sank into the chair, looking 30 years older. He hid his face in his hands. I'm sorry, I can't. Alden closed his eyes, listening to Grady's thoughts, transmitting another plea. Not since the cheating incident had Sophie been so tempted to violate the ethics of telepathy to find out what was going on. But if Alden somehow caught her, Bronte could use it to have her exiled. Would he catch her? She could probably sneak in without him knowing, but what would she do with the information? If she said or did anything about it, he'd know how to find her. It wasn't worth the risk. Alden let out a full-body sigh. I'll have to find another way, then. Excuse me. He nodded to Sophie as he turned to leave. Wait. It took her a second to realize the voice was hers. She cleared her throat as Alden turned to face her. What's going on? Alden opened his mouth, but Grady cut him off. Go to bed, Sophie. But go to bed, now. She'd never heard Grady so angry. Even Alden took a step back. She blinked, her eyes burning with hurt and humiliation, and fled to her room. Grady and Adeline weren't home when Sophie came down for breakfast. They left a note on the table for her. Gone out. No good morning, no love Grady and Adeline. She tried not to let it bother her, but it did. They were still gone when she got home from school. As much as she wanted to practice telepathy with Verdi or Gildy, she stayed inside and studied. She was determined to do what she could to cooperate. At sunset, the gnomes shared some of their dinner with her, and she ate in her room, alone, wondering if she should worry. When the stars came out, she decided it was time to call Alden. Before she could, the front door slammed. She raced down the hall, freezing when she heard a hushed conversation. She peered over the railing, catching a partial view of Grady and Adeline. It was the right decision, Grady told Adeline, sweeping the hair off her face as he pulled her closer. Muffling sobs drifted up the stairs. It's the best for everyone. Alden will find someone else. Adeline cried harder, and Grady cleared his throat. Come on, I'll take you upstairs. Sophie barely had enough time to sneak back to her room. She crouched by Iggy's cage and rubbed his cheeks through the bars, as Grady peeked his head through the doorway. Oh, you're awake. I wanted to make sure you got home safe before I went to bed. Guilt twisted his handsome features. Sorry, didn't mean to worry you. It's okay. Where were you? On an errand. She stared at her hands. Did it have something to do with Alden's visit last night? That's none of your business. You should go to bed. It's getting late. She didn't want to upset him, but she needed to know. Something bad is happening, isn't it? Grady's sigh echoed through the silence. It's nothing you need to worry about, okay? Okay, she agreed. But when she crawled into bed, all she did was worry. That concludes our next 3 chapters here. Can't wait to see you for the following 3. Thanks so much for listening. Bye!